It's quite extraordinary. You may know that I have this briefing of the president, Robert Scheer, every week. And this past episode was just 3 hours after the president, the real one, appeared in the Roosevelt room, started to talk about the good news that Bashar al-Assad has fallen, and that this new group, we have to watch him, of course, but it's going to be a, by implication, terrific improvement. Oh, well, watch him, okay? Well, briefing the other president, Robert Scheer, 3 hours later, I said, Mr. President, you got a problem here. What's that? Well, this fellow we used to call a terrorist. Actually, we still call him a terrorist. This guy Jolani, who you said now you're going to give millions to, and matter of fact, I don't think Tony Blinken thought to take them off the rewards for terrorists list. They're offering the State Department is $10 million for this guy. So, and the faux president says, "What?" I says, "Yeah." Well, he says, "When did you check the list?" I said, 10 minutes ago. He says, "Well, I said, "Well, I know that Blinken was probably busy preparing your remarks for just 3 hours ago in the Roosevelt room." I want to talk about that too, because there were several things you should know that were not quite true in those remarks. But for the nonce, you really have to realize that get this guy off the terrorist list if you're going to deal with him, or your caution that somebody inserted in your remarks there in the Roosevelt room is completely well warranted. This guy is a head chopper. Now, Nima, I went on a slightly lighter vein, although true enough, I have some Christian Zionist friends, okay? And they were so rejoicing about Assad's removal and Jolani's appearance as the head of Syria for all intents and purposes, to the degree he is. And they said, this is amazing. It's as though it's as though he fell to the ground on his way to Damascus. And he heard a voice, Jolani, you're not Jolani anymore. You are not Al-Qaeda anymore. You are not Al-Nusra anymore. We give you 3 initials that nobody will be able to pronounce or understand. NTS. And so you're in. Wow. Can you imagine that? They said to me. I said, you're kidding. No. He had a conversion on the road to Damascus, right? Why can't you see that? You're a believer. Well, I can't see it. I'm sorry. I'm also an intelligence analyst. I just have to see how many heads get chopped off now. It's a weird situation. I mean, we have an expression here in America. It's a can of worms. Okay. Now, with no disrespect to worms, the situation in Syria, in particular, ever since the West tried to exploit what began as a legitimate protest by Syrian citizens against the indignities of the Bashar al-Assad regime, that was 2011, okay? Well, then we went in big time. And as I think I mentioned on this program before, we armed and supplied and trained moderate terrorists. We don't say moderate rebels. Okay, it sounds a little better because we were rebels once 2.5 centuries ago. So moderate rebels, we invested at one point $500 million in training what we'd hoped be thousands, and it turned out that the head of CENTCOM at the time, General Lloyd Austin, had to testify before Congress that what was the results of all that for $500 million. Well, we have moderate rebels still in the fight. How many? 4 or 5? Anyhow, however embarrassed they were, they didn't stop. You had the agency training rebels in one part of Syria. You had the Pentagon training moderate rebels in the other part of Syria. And now we have a situation where Turkey, in my view, has gone way farther than it needed to It inherits a mess here. Who is Jolani going to deal with? Well, I don't know. I don't know if even even the Biden regime will be willing to deal with them, as we see. Initially we had CNN, and it was almost as though they decided to sheep dip, an intelligent term, all right? Sheep dip Sholani, put lipstick on this, pardon the expression, pig, and present him as the savior of Syria. Now, the big winner here, of course, is Israel. That's what this is all about. Now, Turkey expected to be the big winner. It's a can of worms for Turkey. There's some like 5 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. Are they going to get them back, or push them back, or are they going to try to take over part of northern Syria? I don't know. But Israel is the big winner, and Israel now is crowing about bombing the hell out of the rest of Syria, leaving no military infrastructure, and actually creating more than a cordon sanitaire, more than just a buffer zone. Now they're into Syria. Why are they in there? Well, as Israel and the U.S. explained quite logically, Israel has the right to defend itself. And when there's a threat on its borders from some foreign country, well, Israel must go in there, not only seize the Golan Heights, which by all international law belongs to Syria, but now they've gone into Syria proper. Can't you understand? They need to defend themselves. Well, comparisons are invidious, but, when NATO was setting up in Ukraine, the infrastructure was there. When they spent 8 years training and equipping an army in Ukraine that was second to none in Western Europe, the Russians got a little worried. Did not the Russians have the right to defend themselves? I mean, nobody likes invading other countries, but I'm just saying that it's more than a rhetorical point here. It's a reality. If you are a powerful country and you feel a threat from another country, first of all, try to deal with them. Try to create a treaty or something if you're Russia, and when you turn down, in the final analysis, a great power will do what's necessary to defend itself, okay? The analogy is imperfect, but the rhetoric is very, very opposite. And we can go back to Kosovo. We can go back to all kinds of precedents where there's one set of rules for the Western powers and for our intelligence services, and there's another set of rules for Israel and for the United States. What else to say about? We ought to talk about how the Russians are treating this, but I don't want to go on endlessly, Nima. You may have other questions.
Ray, do you think that right now in Syria, al-Jawlani, his real name is something else. I don't remember his real name, but his second name is al-Jawlani. He's talking about that the main enemy, we are not interested in war, and the main enemy is Iran and Hezbollah. Right now, none of these two parties is in Syria. Right now, Israel is attacking Syria. And do you see any sort of reaction on their part against Israel?
Well, Iran has taken a real blow here. It has been a major sponsor of Hezbollah, and now it's really, really hard for Iran to get arms, weapons, and other supplies into Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. That's a real problem. This is all very, very carefully etched out by Netanyahu and his Western allies, the US and UK. So, there's no gainsaying the fact that Iran has suffered a major blow. Now, what have they said about it? Not too much. Most people who know about Iran and know about the history of whether or not they would decide to create a nuclear weapon, now use all that all that refined uranium to put into a weapon, okay, which they've resisted doing since 2003. If my subtraction is right, that's 21 years, right? That's when the U.S. intelligence agencies decided and said unanimously that Iran had stopped working on a nuclear weapon at the end of 2003. Now, you know what happened in the beginning of 2003. It's not hard to put two and two together and for the Iranians to decide, look, there's no real purpose in us doing that at this time because they'll find out about it. And that will give Israel a pretext to go after us. Now, will the Iranians change their tune now? There's a lot of pressure against Pezeshkian, the new head of Iran. He's been reaching out to the West now for as long as he's been in power, I think a year, 2 years, I think. Okay, and he's been saying, "Look, fellas," or as Lavrov would say, "Hey guys, hey guys, look, let's deal with the West. The sanctions are killing us. Let's see if we can make one last chance to get rid of the sanctions to reassure the West that we resent Israel, what it's doing, but we have no beef with the United States. We have no weapons that can possibly reach the United States proper. So let's make a last try." Well, didn't work. He was rebuffed, and that's clear. It's on the record, okay? So what about all these backbiters that Pezeshkian so far has been able to fend off? What about these guys say, "What are you, crazy? The Israelis are going to, we're next, for God's sake." The only deterrent that works is the one that North Korea had, okay? Now remember, North Korea was an axis of terrorism, but they didn't get invaded. They didn't get attacked. Why? Because they had a nuclear weapon. Come on, you guys. You end with the fatwa, the religious fantasy that we can defend ourselves. And again, every nation has this right to defend itself, right? We have to go to a nuclear weapon. A lot of my friends think that's almost inevitable now. I still have my doubts because I think there's more to an edict, this fatwa. I think Iran's religious leaders take that very seriously. And I think that they also would worry that as soon as they started developing a nuclear weapon, the United States and the UN would find out about it that day, okay? And if that happened, what would be the temptation for Israel and its friends, namely the United States, to preempt, to demonstrate that Iran was on the verge of a nuclear weapon, and they could do that. The intelligence is damn good on this, okay? And then say, "Oh, we have to preempt this," and much of the world would be persuaded that, after all, Israel has a right to defend itself, right? And whoa, nuclear weapon. Well, so I think that's another disincentive for the Iranian rulers to willy-nilly go down a path that they have resisted so far. It's it's just a guess on my part, but I think the past would dictate that they'd be very prudent. And if they have hypersonic missiles, if, as they have demonstrated on the ground, they can destroy parts of Israel, well, I think in this day and age, Iran too has a deterrent, okay? It's not a nuclear deterrent, but as we have learned, these missiles that go at several times the speed of sound are in themselves unstoppable, not able to be defended against. And as I say, Iran has already hit targets in Israel to demonstrate precisely that, even though the Western press has sort of glossed over that fact, it's reality, and reality is what we try to deal with here.
Ray, how do you find the leadership in Iran and Russia? How do they feel about Turkey right now?
Well, let's face it, the Turks double-crossed the Russians and Iran. They have this Astana process, well established, where they talk to each other. The big thing about talking to each other is no surprises, huh? May not be allies, but we have a common interest in a measure of stability in Syria. So no surprises, okay? Well, surprise, surprise, Erdogan felt for some reason that he could surprise everybody. Now, I think he's overextended. I don't know what his staying power is. And I don't know, how much he thinks he's in control of these rebels. They call them moderate or immoderate, head chopping rebels. I doubt that he has the kind of control that he would wish for. So everything's a can of worms again. When I say this, I've been at this in the Middle East. My expertise is mostly Russian, but I've been watching this situation in the Middle East since Iraq. But when the Russians came in, okay, now that was a benchmark. That was a liminal step. Why? Because up until then, the attitude of the United States was, look, we can do what we want. We can do what we want to Iraq. We can do what we want to Libya and to Syria, and the Russians won't stop us. That's exactly what Paul Wolfowitz said right after the big victory in Gulf War I, early 1991. Well, when it looked like our moderate rebels, in conjunction with other forces, were about to depose Bashar al-Assad in Damascus, the Russians looked at the lay of the land and said, this would not be good for us. Bashar al-Assad is he's not our ally, but he's a close friend. We have certain bases there. Let's see what we can do. And what happened was, it was the 29th of September, 2015. They were at the UN, okay? Putin was there, and he said to the Americans, look, that was Obama, okay? He said, look, we're going to go into Syria with our armed forces. We have a terrific air force, as perhaps you know. We're going to go in there and make sure that you guys who are at this illicit, underhanded war against Bashar al-Assad, that you don't win, okay? So we don't want any trouble, okay? We don't want any trouble. So what Putin said to Obama is, look, we're going to be flying aircraft. You're going to be flying aircraft over Syria. For God's sake, we don't want the kind of trouble that would come if one of us shot down the other, okay? So please have Sergei Lavrov talk with John Kerry at the time. Please, Mr. Obama, ask John Kerry to get in touch with my foreign minister, says Putin, Lavrov, and work on this thing. Try to get a ceasefire here where the rebels don't overwhelm Bashar al-Assad. That is our interest. And Mr. President, the old has gone out. The new is here. This time, we can prevent you from doing this, and we're hellbound intended to do that. Now, Obama, for whatever he was a sensible person, right? And he said, well, all right, John Kerry, get together with Sergei Lavrov, see what you can do. Now, this is where the can of worms comes in. They worked for 11 months, okay? 11 months. Then in the fall, if I recall correctly, of 2016, they had an agreement, a ceasefire. And they went to Putin and they went to Obama, and they got their explicit chop on that. They got their explicit blessing of the ceasefire. It went into effect. 5 days after it went into effect, the American Air Force bombed the hell out of fixed Syrian infantry positions, killed almost 100 people, wounded another 100. Fixed Syrian positions that had been there forever, okay, not forever, but at least a year, okay? End of ceasefire. Wow. Now, it was clear that what Kerry and Obama said didn't matter to the Pentagon. They went ahead and did this anyway. And Kerry admitted that later. He said, not everyone agreed with this. It was Obama and me against, well, he didn't say the Pentagon, but it said other forces. Very clear what happened, okay? So what happens? The point of my can of worms thing is Kerry, down-mouthed, gets on a plane, comes back to Washington. First thing, Steve Clemons, a very, very articulate, really smart interviewer, gets him to come before the Atlantic Council meeting. Now, I was there, me and 1,000 others, but I was there, okay, because I heard he was coming. And this is what he said. This is worth reflecting on, because it has to do with how you align, that's the word, how you align a can of worms, okay? Steve Clemons asks him, what happened here with the ceasefire? It was agreed to by Putin and Obama and all this. What happened? Well, rather than explain to Steve Clemons right then, well, we were ambushed by our own military, and that's a bad thing because there's a lack of trust between Putin and you and Obama, of course. So here's Secretary Kerry. He says, I have to say, this is just 2 sentences, so bear with me. Kerry, quote, I have to say that Syria is as complicated as anything I've ever seen in public life, in the sense that there are probably 6 wars or so going on at the same time, Kurd against Kurd, Kurd against Turkey, Saudi Arabia, Iran, Sunni, Shia, everybody against ISIL, people against Assad, Nusra. This is as mixed up sectarian civil war and strategic and proxy, so it's very, very difficult. Get this, Nima. It's very, very difficult to be able to align all those forces. Now, Steve Clemons says, well, in the middle of all that, Secretary Kerry, why did you think you could get a ceasefire? Secretary Kerry, silence. Well, the answer was, because we thought we could align all these forces. Well, it may be after World War II or World War I here, you could align forces, but you can't do that anymore, okay? And part of the fly in the ointment, of course, is these moderate rebels that we've armed to the teeth and trained, and now are in play. Now, big thing, of course, in my view, is not only Erdogan's dilemma, how is he going to get out of this? But Israel, where is it going to stop? If Erdogan is overstretched, I mean, God, where is Israel think it's going to stop? It's not going to be able to take over all of Syria, I don't think, but they'll try, I think, The other thing that we haven't discussed yet is the Russians. Now, I listened to Alexander Mercuris last night, and he has a special source within the Wagner group there that works with the Russians, the unofficial group that does paramilitary stuff for the Russians. They've always been in Syria big time, okay? Well, he has a source there. He's unabashedly admitted that, yeah, this is his firsthand experience. And in the first day or two of this attack by Ojolani and all the other folks that came down from Turkey and came otherwise from Israel and other places, well, the Wagner reinforced itself. They sent more reinforcements from Damascus, and they were ready to, protect. They were ready to, to get in the fray. And there were mobilizations in that airfield that the Russians have in Syria, and precautions taken by the Navy in Latakia. So what happened? Well, according to Mercuris' source, the Syrian army decided to retreat. And as soon as that word got back to Moscow, I could see it happening. Okay, are we going to be able to align all these forces? Not really, Mr. President Putin. Well, are we going to be able to come in with 2 feet and reverse it with a Syrian army that's retreating? We don't think so, Mr. President. What are our options? Lavrov, what do you think? Well, the Americans have this expression, playing poker, when to hold them and when to fold them. We need to fold them, Mr. President. We don't want to make a Vietnam type mistake and get embroiled in something. We're already embroiled in Ukraine. Let's get the hell out of Syria, or at least prepare to show the new Syrian government or whatever that we're ready to leave. If you ask us to leave, my own guess is that they'd be ready to stay if they were asked to stay. Those are very important bases, but they're not indispensable, for God's sake. I mean, the big thing is the Oreshnish. The big thing is the Russians have a Wunderwaffe, okay? We've been talking about miracle weapons all during Ukraine, but this is one, okay? And they've demonstrated it. And, as long as they have these weapons and as long as they have the range that they apparently do and the destructive capacity that they apparently do without causing a nuclear fallout or anything like that, they're riding high. This is a new strategic equation. This, too, is a liminal event. It changes the rules of the game. So I can see that that's in the background of these.
Ray, can you hear me? Yeah, Ray, we've lost you. I don't know if you hear me right now.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Let me see if I.
Yeah,
something to do with my power, I think. Let me see if I can get back up here.
Okay.
Or I can keep talking while, if you can see me. Can you see me?
No, your picture is not working. It's just freeze here.
Okay. Well, let me see if I can do something here to get this thing back up.
But we can hear you. You can.
Okay. Okay. Well, I'll just continue. I was talking about.
Yeah, we've lost your voice as well. We cannot hear you right now, Ray. Yeah, right now we don't have your. We have your picture, but we don't have your picture and your voice. Can you hear me, Ray, right now?